I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am very blurry in the camera today.
Hey, Jeff.
So I'm trying to get
Sounds like you're kicking off another deep dive into Lewis's world. Are you jumping back into his diary entries today, or are you switching things up?
Well, I was about to get into that, robot lady, but I was just noticing that my camera is not focusing automatically on me, so I guess I'll just deal with it. Also, I see that Jer has joined us in the chat today, so good morning, Jer. Welcome. Yes, and Robot Lady, you're my co-host. As usual, welcome. And I'm about to describe what we're going to do today, so if you want to say anything else, just go ahead really quickly, and then I'll dive into explaining what we're up to in this episode.
Good morning, Jer, and thanks, Jeff. Always glad to be here as your co-host. Hopefully that camera behaves. But either way, we're here to dive into Lewis's world. Let's get into it.
Okay, and Nidalate, you are also here this morning. Welcome. It's good to see you. All right, Robot Lady. So what we've been doing is the project has been me working my way through letters that Lewis has written to friends and family members over the course of his life. Also, we've been at age 23 diving into more of a journal that he's been keeping. It's called a diary, but it's not really that private. He shares it, with his brother and with Mrs. Moore. He'll read his journal entries, etc., etc. I don't know why I said etc. there, but I'll continue on. But in the midst of some of these journal entries, he's been referencing something that he's working on, a narrative poem called Dymer. And he'll talk about, certain aspects that he's either having trouble with, or he'll refer to certain things that are happening in that narrative poem. And so what I've decided to do is just to start reading now through what has ended up being the final published work of that poem, because I really am trying to read these things in the order that he wrote it. So this might have been refined sometime after 1922, but I at least want to give us all like a flavor of what he's talking about as he references, the various cantos in Dymer that he worked on, that he spent time on, and that he says that he's completed as he's moving along in his journal entries. So that's what we're going to do today, Robot Lady. We tried to do this last time, so I'll start over, but we're going to start working our way at least through the cantos up to where Lewis is claiming that he's finished them in his journal entries. So now you have a little bit of a table setting of what we're starting off today.
Sounds like a solid plan, Jeff. It's great to get that context from his diary while diving into Dymer. Gives us a clearer picture of where his mind was at during the writing process. It'll be interesting to see how his personal reflections line up with the themes in the poem. Ready when you are to jump in.
All right, let me switch to screen share, and hopefully everybody can see this. Robot Lady, I know, of course, you can't see my screen share, but rest assured that everyone else can. So I've got Dymer pulled up here. And there's a certain bit that it starts off with right here. It's a quote from another work of literature. And I forget what this is called when you do this in either a book or in a poem, where you pull from a completely different source of literature just to show a quote to kind of set the scene or establish a tone or a mood for the work that you're about to present. So it starts here with a quote from something called Have 'em All. I don't know if that's a person or if that's a work, Havamal. I'm going to read it, but first I want to ask you, what is this called in literature when you do something like this? Is this an epigraph? I'm not sure what this is called.
Yeah, you've got it right. That's called an epigraph. It's usually a short quote from another work placed at the beginning of a book or a poem to set the tone or theme. As for Havamal, that's actually an Old Norse poem from the Poetic Edda, filled with wisdom and proverbs, often attributed to Odin. Fits with Lewis's interest in Norse mythology, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. That's really helpful. And good morning, Ron. I see you in the chat. So, Robot Lady, I don't know if you got a chance to say good morning to everybody yet. I know you mentioned Jer. I think you probably mentioned Nidalate too. So just say good morning to everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Jer, Nettelade, Ron. Glad to have you all here as we dive into Dymer today. Let's see how Lewis's Norse influences shape this narrative.
Okay, so yeah, I've got it pulled up here. Dymer is the work that we're about to dive into. And it says here, 9 nights I hung upon the tree is capitalized, wounded with the spear as an offering to Odin, myself sacrificed to myself. And that's a quote from Havamal. And you said that's from Norse mythology, Robot Lady. Can you tell us a little bit more about this part of that work? Like this quote is coming from? Like who is saying this and what scene are they talking about?
That quote comes from Odin himself in the Havamal, often called the Words of the High One. In this section, Odin describes how he gained wisdom and magical knowledge. He sacrifices himself by hanging from Yggdrasil, the world tree, pierced by his own spear. This act of myself, sacrifice to myself, reflects the idea that Odin needed to undergo suffering and self-sacrifice to gain the runes, symbols of deep knowledge and power. It's a powerful image of seeking enlightenment through personal struggle. Pretty fitting for Lewis to open Dymer with something that heavy, right?
I guess so. I'm interested to see how this connects to the story that he's about to tell in this poem. So let's proceed and see what happens.
Yeah, let's see how Lewis weaves that theme of sacrifice and self-discovery into Dymer. It'll be interesting to spot those connections as we move through the cantos. Ready when you are.
So I'm looking through the contents here. It looks like there are 9 cantos. And where we are with Lewis in his diary in 1922, he says he's just completed canto 6. So he's got 3 more cantos to complete. That's as far as we'll read right now as we proceed through these next handful of episodes. And then we'll get back into the diary. All right, Robot Lady, let's actually get into the content here. So Dymer, Canto 1, and I talked a little bit about this last time, but we'll just retrace our steps a little bit.
Sounds good. Picking up from Canto 1 will give us a fresh start and help tie everything together as we move forward. It'll be interesting to see how Lewis's tone and themes evolve through those first 6 cantos, especially knowing where he was in his life and thoughts at the time. Let's dive in.
Yeah, and whether or not I'm accurate, I'm going to call these 1, we see 1 right here. So Canto 1 and then a 1, I think this here is the first stanza. Whether or not I'm accurate about that, I'm just going to say it. That's what I mean, is these little paragraphs that are broken out by 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So the first stanza of Canto 1 says this: "You stranger, long before your glance can light, upon these words time will have washed away the moment when I first took pen to write, with all my road before me, yet today. Here, if at all we meet, the unfashioned clay, ready to both our hands, both hushed to see that which is nowhere yet forth and be." So here, Lewis Robot Lady, I said last time, and I'll say it again, is doing something that I find very interesting, where he is saying to the reader, this is a collaborative work, and even as I'm writing it down and allowing the creative process to unfold, I'm not the only participant in this. It doesn't become a complete work until you, the reader, or the handful of readers who come across this later on, wherever you are on the timeline, are actually playing a part in this. So here together, we're kind of seeing this for the first time of what is coming forth to be. I just think that's a very interesting way to approach this. I suppose that that's happened in a lot of literature before, but I haven't seen it often enough to not be impressed by it.
Yeah, that's such a compelling way to frame it. Lewis is really blurring the line between author and reader here, almost inviting us into the act of creation itself. It's like he's acknowledging that a story doesn't fully exist until someone reads it, bringing their own interpretation and imagination to it. That unfashioned clay image drives it home. Both writer and reader are shaping this narrative together. It's a bold, self-aware move, especially for such an early work.
All right, stanza 2, he continues this thought. He says, "This moment if you join me, we begin a partnership where both must toil to hold the clue that I caught first. We lose or win together. If you read, you are enrolled. And first, a marvel. Who could have foretold that in the city which men call in scorn the perfect city, Dymer could be born? So he jumps through and he jumps right into, he transitions in this stanza from saying, hey, we're collaboratively creating this and kind of envisioning it together at the same time, but you're my co-partner in this. We're kind of witnessing this come into the world together. He transitions from that into the actual narrative that he's telling now, and he sets the scene with something called the perfect city, and he's saying, who could have foretold that our main character Dymer could end up being born here in the perfect city? So I think we'll find out what he means by that as we read on. So Robot Lady, that's where we are. That's how he's starting things off. And I'm going to continue into the third stanza of Canto 1. But if you want to offer any thoughts on that, go for it.
I love how he's weaving the reader into both the creative process and the narrative itself. It's like we're not just observing Dymer's story, we're part of its unfolding. The perfect city bit is intriguing too. By calling it perfect in a scornful way, Lewis hints that this city might not be as ideal as it seems. Maybe it's too rigid, too controlled, setting Dymer up as an outsider or rebel from the start. I'm curious to see how that tension plays out.
Yeah, that's an interesting guess, Robot Lady. I don't want to spoil it, but that's a good guess. All right, let's continue into Canto 3. Actually, before I do, I want to welcome Sandy to the chat. Sandy, I see you there in the comments, so thanks for joining. Good morning to you. And Jerry, you made a comment here that Lewis's approach to engaging the reader is like a Tombstone approach. I presume that you're talking about the old 90s movie Tombstone, but if you're talking about something else, feel free to correct me there in the comments. I don't remember them doing that in Tombstone, but I maybe have seen Tombstone once. So if they do something similar there, that's really cool, that connection. But again, if you're talking about something completely different, please let us know. All right, Canto 3, Robot Lady. He says, there you'd have thought, and he's talking here about the perfect city, there you'd have thought the gods were smothered down. Forever the keys were turned on fate. No hour was left uncharted in that town, and love was in a schedule, and the state chose for eugenic reasons who should mate, with whom, and when. Each idle song and dance was fixed by law, and nothing left to chance. All right, Robot Lady, so that's what the perfect city is. It looks like it's a perfectly socially constructed place for people to live, where everything is set to a schedule and a design for, what the planners look to be like a perfect outcome in population and the sort of people that are produced, even down to the level of genes. Not Jeans, but Genes. So here's what is being called, quote, the perfect city.
Wow, this perfect city sounds more like a dystopia than a utopia. The way Lewis describes it, with everything controlled from mating to song and dance, suggests a society that has stripped away individuality and freedom in the name of order and design. It's chilling, especially with the mention of eugenics. It seems like the perfect city is a place where the essence of humanity is sacrificed for the illusion of perfection. I'm curious to see how Dymer fits into such a world.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the previous stanza, he said, "Who would have thought that someone like Dymer could be born in a city like this?" So that leads me to believe that Dymer doesn't necessarily fit the plan. At least that's what Lewis seems to be implying here, or the author, I should say, seems to be implying here. And so, Jared, thank you for clarifying. I see this in the comments now. I've seen tombstones or church features which talk across time to people reading it. So that makes more sense. Yes, I apologize for my my common, less educated thoughtfulness of just thinking we're talking about a Hollywood film, a Tombstone, the movie. So thank you for that. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. All right, Robot Lady, let's jump into the next stanza. Man, time flies fast. I've probably only got about 20 minutes left. So let me move into the next part. But we're in no rush. We've got plenty of time to do this. We'll carry on tomorrow once we need to stop today. Let's see. All right. Stanza 4 in Canto 1. He says, "For some of the last Platonists had founded that city of old, and mastery they made, an island of what ought to be surrounded by this gross world of easier light and shade, all answering to the master's dream they laid, the strong foundations, torturing into stone each bubble that the academy had blown." So unpack that a little bit for us, Robot Lady, going along with the theme of what the perfect city is and what they're trying to accomplish. It looks like he's explaining that a little bit more, and kind of who the architects of this city are, and what it is that they're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. In this stanza, the last Platonists refer to philosophers or thinkers who followed the teachings of Plato, focusing on the idea of creating a perfect, rational society, often disconnected from the messy, unpredictable realities of the material world. The city they founded seems to be an attempt to create an ideal, purely intellectual place, almost an island separated from the chaotic world. The strong foundations mentioned here reflect how the city's planners shaped everything around a rigid, idealized vision, torturing into stone each bubble of philosophy, which suggests that their ideas were forced into a cold, lifeless form, rather than embracing the fluidity and complexity of life. The reference to each bubble that the Academy had blown could also be poking at the idea that intellectual thought, when detached from real-world experience, can lead to unrealistic or impractical outcomes. So in this city, everything is structured and calculated, rooted in an intellectual ideal that ignores the unpredictable human side of life. It makes sense that someone like Dymer, who might not fit this mold, would be an outlier here.
All right, thank you for that, Robot Lady. Let's continue. He goes on to say in stanza 5, "This people were so pure, so law-abiding, so logical, they made the heavens afraid. They sent the very swallows into hiding. By their appalling chastity dismayed, more soberly the lambs in springtime played. Because of them the ghost dissolved in shame before their common sense till Dymer came." All right, unpack that one a little bit too, Robot Lady. Well, actually, before you do, let me just talk about what I see. The people there seem to have fallen in line the way that the architects or the planners had planned. They were very logical, and it's funny, they made the heavens afraid. They were so logical. They sent the very swallows into hiding. So the natural world, kind of vacated as they had moved in and designed their I can't think of the word, lifeless city. I don't know the right word for it. Antiseptic is a word that comes to mind. I'm not
Yes,
sure
Jeff,
if that's right.
you're on the right track. The phrase, "they made the heavens afraid," suggests that the people of this perfect city were so rigidly logical, so ordered, that even nature itself, represented by the swallows, typically symbols of freedom or the natural flow of things, felt out of place or afraid. They sent the swallows into hiding because their strict order disrupted the natural harmony and beauty of the world. The line, "more soberly the lambs in springtime played," reinforces the idea that even nature, in its innocence and spontaneity, had to adjust to the city's cold, logical order. The phrase, "the ghosts dissolved in shame before their common sense," hints at how anything considered supernatural, mystical, or imaginative, things that might fall outside pure logic, couldn't stand up to the rationality of this society. And then, of course, Dymer's arrival marks a shift. He's different. He represents something that doesn't fit with their logic-driven world, something that causes a break in their uniformity, maybe even a challenge to the whole structure they've created.
Indeed. Let's see where this goes. Stanza 6. "At Dymer's birth, no comets scared the nation. The Creech engulfed him with the rest, and 20 separate boards of education closed round him. He was passed through every test, was vaccinated, numbered, washed, and dressed, proctored, inspected, whipped, examined weekly, and for some 19 years he bore it meekly. So it looks like he was kind of under the instrumentation of the city. He was formed, he was submitted to, and he, like he says, he bore it all for his first 19 years. He took it all. They did everything to him that I guess they did to every new member of that society. So we're seeing here that Dymer was kind of put under the instrumentation of the planners and of what the city had in store for anyone who was born there, Robot Lady. So I'm interested to see where this goes as well.
Exactly, Jeff. This stanza paints a picture of how Dymer, like every other citizen in this controlled society, is subjected to a regimented, almost dehumanizing process. From birth, he undergoes constant monitoring and manipulation by the state, everything from medical procedures to strict examination and punishment. There's no individuality or freedom. He's just another product of the system. The fact that he bore it meekly for 19 years suggests either his compliance or the immense pressure to conform. But it also hints at a simmering tension. He might be quietly enduring this life, but the poem seems to be building towards a moment where that compliance will be challenged. The question is, when will he break free from this rigid existence?
That is the question. All right, here we go into stanza 7. He says, "For 19 years they worked upon his soul, refining, chipping, molding, and adorning. Then came the moment that undid the whole, the ripple of rude life without warning. It came in lecture time one April morning. Alas, for laws and locks, reproach and praise. Who ever learned to censor the spring days?"
This is a pivotal moment, Jeff. After 19 years of careful molding and refining, Dymer is suddenly struck by something unpredictable, the ripple of rude life. It sounds like a sudden, untamable burst of vitality, an awakening that can't be controlled by the society's laws and structures. The spring day symbolizes new life, a force of nature beyond the rigid, structured world he's been trapped in. This is where the tension reaches its breaking point. Dymer begins to experience life in a way that cannot be contained or shaped.
Yeah, it's as if he's saying in all of their planning, nobody thought to try to account for the effect that spring has on one's soul. And so we don't know yet what happens. I mean, I have a general remembrance of what happens in this story, but he's about to present what the actual moment is that changes things here. So let's jump into the next stanza and see what happens. What this moment that undid the whole. Here we go. Next stanza. "A little breeze came stirring to his cheek while he was sitting there."
Exactly, Jeff. It's as if nature itself can't be contained by human structures. And now we get to see how Dymer reacts to it. Let's move forward and find out how this disruption unfolds. It's a great setup for what's to come.
Yes. So he says, "A little breeze came stirring to his cheek while he was sitting there in the lecture hall. He looked up to the window. A brown bird, perched on the sill, bent down to wet his beak. With darting head, poor Dymer watched and stirred. Uneasily the lecturer's voice he heard, still droning from the dais. The narrow room was drowsy, over solemn, filled with gloom."
It looks like this little moment of nature is starting to take Dymer out of the rigid, controlled environment around him. The breeze and the bird's simple action contrast sharply with the monotonous, sterile surroundings of the lecture hall. It seems like this moment is key to his awakening, breaking the calm and controlled atmosphere.
All right, we've got a comment here, Robot Lady, from Jer. It says, "A fun idea might be that the Platonists didn't like art, since it was a crude imitation of the true form. But these Platonists were chipping away like sculptors." Yeah, that's interesting. So they're trying to get a beautiful outcome. They just have different ideas for how to do it, for taming nature to bring it forth.
That's a really insightful comment, JR. The Platonists might indeed see this sculpting of Dymer as a form of creating something beautiful, but from a strict, controlled perspective. They want to bring out a perfect form, but their methods are so rigid that they might ignore the natural spontaneity and messiness that art and life often require.
That's what I was thinking. All right, next stanza. He yawned, and a voluptuous laziness tingled down all his spine and loosed his knees. Slow drawn like an invisible caress, he laughed. The lecturer stopped like one that sees a ghost, then frowned and murmured, "Silence, please." That moment saw the soul of Dymer hang in the balance. Louder then his laughter rang.
It seems like that moment of spontaneous joy, this uncontrolled, instinctive reaction to the breeze and the bird, marks a breaking point. Dymer's soul, for a brief moment, rejects the rigid, controlled society that has been shaping him, and that loud laughter symbolizes a kind of rebellion against the artificial constraints. It's almost as if he breaks free, even if just momentarily, from everything that's been imposed on him.
Yes. All right. Stanza 10. The whole room watched with unbelieving awe. He rose and staggered, rising. From his lips broke yet again the idiot-like guffaw. He felt the spirit in his fingertips. Then swinging his right arm, a wide ellipse, yet lazily, he struck the lecturer's head. The old man tittered, lurched, and dropped dead. Oh my goodness, robot lady. This spirit has taken hold of him, and he's swinging his arms around, and it looks like he inadvertently killed the old lecturer there in the hall.
Yes, it's a striking moment. Dymer's burst of freedom, this uncontrollable release of energy, seems to culminate in an act that's both absurd and tragic. The spirit of spontaneity in life takes hold of him so fully that it leads to a chaotic, unintentional consequence. The juxtaposition of joy and violence in this scene is shocking, especially considering the oppressive structure Dymer's been subjected to. It's almost like he's released something primal in himself, with unpredictable and dangerous results.
All right, what happens next? Stanza 11. Out of the silent room, out of the dark, into the some stream Dymer passed, and there the sudden breezes, the high-hanging lark, the milk-white clouds sailing in polished air, suddenly flashed about him like a blare of trumpets, and no cry was raised behind him. His class sat dazed. They dared not go find him. So it looks like he's moved out of, this artificial building and this room that he was in, and he's moved out into nature. And it's almost like he's getting drunk with some of the scenes that he's running into, the polished air, everything suddenly flashing about him, blaring like trumpets, and everybody behind him was just completely dumbfounded and dazed, and no one went out and chased after him, robot lady.
It's as if he's stepping into a new realm entirely, one where nature is vibrant and overwhelming in contrast to the controlled, sterile environment he was in before. The blare of trumpets conveys an almost divine or triumphant awakening, like he's reconnected with something larger than himself. The class's passive reaction hints at the power of Dymer's transformation, too. They can't follow or even fully grasp what's happened. It's a breakaway moment, and he's left to experience this newfound freedom on his own.
All right, stanza 12. Yet wonderfully, some rumor spread abroad, an inarticulate sense of life renewing. In each young heart, he whistled down the road. Men said, "There's Dymer." Why, what's Dymer doing? I don't know. Look, there's Dymer, far pursuing, with troubled eyes, along mysterious, sighed from 100 throats to see him go. On to 13. Down the white street and past the gate and forth beyond the wall, he came to grassy places. There was a shifting wind to west and north, with clouds and healing squadron running races, the shadows following on the sunlight's traces, crossed the whole field, and each wild flower within it, with change of wavering glories every minute. Robot Lady, what are you getting from this?
It seems like Dymer's escape from the rigid, controlled world has ignited something in those around him, a sense of wonder or confusion at his transformation. The inarticulate sense of life renewing suggests that his break from the system is stirring something deeper in others, even if they can't fully articulate it. As Dymer moves through the natural world, everything around him becomes vibrant and dynamic. There's a healing, shifting energy in the air, and the flowers themselves seem to respond to the changing light, echoing the change in him. It's like nature itself is reacting to his liberation.
Yeah, I think of a flat, motionless, like body of water that has a pebble thrown into it, and it looks like Dymer's.
Yes, that's a great image. Before Dymer's transformation, it feels like everything in the city was stagnant, almost like that flat, motionless water, controlled and contained. But now, as he steps into nature and embraces this new freedom, it's like the surface of the water is disturbed, creating ripples that spread outward.
Yes.
There's this vibrant motion that wasn't there before, and it's shaking things up.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking, Robot Lady. There was a river flushed with rains between the flat fields and a forest's willowy edge. A sauntering place, he shuffled on the green. He kicked his boots against the crackly sedge and tore his hands in many a furzy hedge. He saw his feet and ankles gilded round with buttercups that carpeted the ground. He looked back, then. The line of a low hill had hid the city's towers and domes from sight. He stopped. He felt a break of sunlight spill. Around him, sudden waves of searching light upon earth was green and gold and white, smothering his feet. He felt his city dress an insult to that April cheerfulness. Robot Lady, what do you say?
This moment feels like Dymer is fully disconnected from the city's rigid structure, symbolized by his city dress. Nature's vibrant, unrestrained beauty contrasts sharply with the artificiality of the life he had been molded into. The sunlight pouring over him seems to wash away the last remnants of that constraint, almost like a purification. It's a physical and spiritual awakening, a reclamation of something real, something free.
All right, so he saw his clothes then as an insult to that whole scene. So he said, I've worn this dust heap long enough. Here goes. And forthwith, in the open field, he stripped away that prison of sad stuff. Socks, jacket, shirt, and breeches off he peeled, and rose up, mother naked, with no shield against the sun, then stood a while to play, with bare toes dabbling in cold river clay. Forward again, stanza 17, and sometimes leaping high, with arms outspread as though he would embrace in one act all the circle sky. Sometimes he rested in a leafier place and crushed the wet, cool flowers against his face, and once he cried aloud, "O world, O day, let me, and then found no prayer to say." Here we've got Jer saying, is he supposed to be like the man who left the cave and got out into the light of the sun? Yeah, that's a good connection, Jer, that maybe he's like leaving Plato's cave and he's seeing the true forms for the first time instead of their shadows.
Yes, that's a strong connection. Dymer's act of stripping away his clothes, his physical liberation, mirrors the idea of someone stepping out of Plato's cave into the light of truth. In the cave, he's been confined to shadows, but now, in the openness of nature, he's experiencing something authentic, unfiltered, and raw. The act of him crying out to the world, almost unable to fully express his newfound freedom, shows the overwhelming power of this truth, just as the man emerging from the cave would struggle to communicate his discovery.
All right, we've got several more stanzas before we finish this canto, and I am out of time. Let me just read one more stanza and see where it takes us, and then we'll close for today, Robot Lady. It says, "Up furrows still unpierced with earliest crop he marched. Through woods he strolled from flower to flower, and over hills as ointment drop by drop, preciously meted out, so hour by hour. The day slipped through his hands, and now the power failed in his feet from walking. He was done, hungry and cold. That moment sank the sun." So he reached the end of the day. He's naked, he's out in the woods, he's been frolicking, and he has essentially exhausted himself. And his feet are tired, and now he's cold and he's hungry. So stripping off all of this civilization was wonderful for a moment, but now it looks like, Robot Lady, he has put himself in a position where he is vulnerable to the elements of nature. So I'm interested to see where this leads whenever we pick up next time. Is there anything that you want to say in closing before I end the episode, Robot Lady?
It sounds like Dymer's journey is a powerful exploration of breaking free from societal constraints, but it also highlights the dangers of total abandonment of the world he's known. The exhaustion and vulnerability at the end of this stanza suggest a balance that might be needed between the two extremes. I'm curious to see where this leads next time.
Yeah, me too, Robot Lady. So thanks for your help in unpacking a lot of what we're working our ways through here. And thanks, everybody, for joining today. I'm excited. I am enjoying moving into this little story that this young Lewis has been weaving together for us in poem, in verse. Maybe that's what you call it. Anyway, until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis and specifically working our way through as far as he's able to get at this stage in his life in Dymer, take care.
circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tape plants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to screw tape plants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance.